This is the response plan for Group 6. It's the Tyson Turf Battle by Kate Heiss, Malik Carver, Lauren Perkins, and Nick Collins. So to begin this off, we begin with a summary. Anderson Farms is a top poultry producer in eastern North Carolina and is threatened by the new competition from Tyson. Tyson hacked Anderson Farms systems to acquire information about Anderson Farms' local customers. Anderson Farms decided to sabotage Tyson's business in North Carolina to keep their consumers and ruin Tyson's reputation. They do this by adding rat poison into the feed that is delivered to the farms. This could range in a total loss of $20,000 to $200,000 per poultry house, and while lost feed costs are around $640, which is about $320 a ton, the recent events at Tyson's producer farms, chickens have been dying, and this has been brought to the public's attention. Tyson fears that this attack will ruin their reputation and lead consumers away from buying their poultry products. For prevention and at the meal detection, you can use various feed tests that analyze the nutrient analysis, physical properties, and this is all a basis for a rejection. These standards should be met before the feed is made for the birds. This will ensure that the rat poison is not added to the feed ingredients before they get to the mill. Tyson needs to make sure that they have an approved supplier list and that they have their contact information if there is an issue with the feed that comes into the mill. This will help in looking back to make sure that no rat poison was added when the feed first came in. The mill needs to make sure that they are checking the shipping documents to see if there are any stops that have been made that weren't on the list to begin with. They needed to confirm the weights that are listed on the tickets. This will tell you if something has been added to the feed, like the attack plan is stating. The weight difference will draw attention to the facility to make sure that they inspect the feed ingredients before letting them enter the facility. They need to sample and check the ingredients that come in. This is important in making sure that the ingredients are high quality and nothing has been added to them that could harm the birds. You can also visually check the samples. By this, you can see if there's any discoloration that you can see with your naked eye before the feed is put into the pit and used to make the chicken feed. And at the farm detection, once you're at the farm, there are a few steps that the company serviceman can do in order to test the feed. They can take feed samples that have just been recently dropped off. The samples can be tested to ensure that there was no contamination that has occurred after the feed has left the mill. This would be if the company hired the trucker to add the poison to the feed after it left the farm, or after it left the feed mill. You could also have a security guard at the mill. The guard shack would allow there to be a paper trail for all the visitors that are coming into the facility. The guards will have the first step in defense to manage the incoming people and to make sure that they are signing in when entering the facility. If there's an incident, then there will be a paper trail to see who all has been there and who the suspects could be. This could be used to determine who has been working for the company and who is causing the issues. For detection, you can do ingredient testing. This would be on the vehicle at the feed mill. You can do a before and an after. You can do a quality sample after your feed has been made before it's loaded onto the truck. Another detection could be that the security guards at the beginning of the mill, like I said, in prevention, these can keep an accurate record of all the visitors at the mill. With the ingredient testing, you could also do the mycotoxin analysis on the grain. That should already be in place since they are supposed to test every truck or train sample when they arrive in the unloading pit. But without us knowing exactly where they plan to add the rat poison, it is hard to be able to run the test to stop it. The best way to just be to look at your security system, your guards, and your cameras, and to double check, making sure that you are checking all of the finished feeds. For a response, the first step in the response would be to designate an incident command chief to oversee operations and lead efforts, while diagnosis of this event and quarantine will happen simultaneously. This will be a part of the operation in Incident Command Systems, ICS. North Carolina Department of Agriculture will be in charge of the operations as it is not suspected that this event will occur outside of North Carolina. All movement of all poultry and feed will be stopped to ensure that we are not spreading the disease or the poison. Local law enforcement and highway state patrol agencies will be needed to ensure movement is halted around affected farms and feed mills. An announcement will be made to the public that movement of poultry feed and poultry will be stopped until the situation is assessed and impacts and affected are recognized. As we start to gather more information about farms affected, it is concluded that Tyson is the only poultry producer that is affected. A couple of dead chickens will be sent off from each farm to the NC State Veterinary Medicine Diagnostic Testing Labs. Every test are back from the lab that this event is a poisoning rather than a disease. Movement of farm producers not related to Tyson will be allowed to resume movement of poultry and feed, which will be notified to the public while Tyson is under investigation. There could be two pathways for the bromethylene being in public while Tyson being ingested by the poultry. The farmers could have used bromethylene to kill the rodents as the rodents could track the poison into the feed, or it could have been an intentional event. It was found during the investigation that it was an intentional event since Tyson poultry producers were the only ones affected. Many of the chickens who ingested the feed will be dead, while chickens who are showing signs of bromethylene toxicity will die also, since there is no antidote for bromethylene. There is no specific antidote, as this will be offered to veterinary and human patients is supportive care. All of the dead poultry and feed will have to be disposed of. The dead chickens will be incinerated on site to reduce transportation of spreading disease by dead carcasses, and the feed will be set on fire. While feed cannot be used again as it will contain bromethylene, this will also be part of the operations. There will be people and equipment needed to move the dead chickens and feed. Each individual will be required to wear sufficient personal protective equipment, or PPE, that will reduce the risk of getting the disease from the dead chickens. PPE will consist of goggles, face masks, full body suits that cover boots, and gloves. Teams of 8 to 12 people will be at each farm to get poultry carcasses ready for the incinerator. And the NCDA will also request that Anderson Farms be responsible for some of the costs that are related to the event cleanup and disposing of the poultry, since they are found to be the people who launched this whole attack. The NCDA released that Tyson will be allowed to take Anderson Farms to court to pay for a certain amount of losses that Anderson Farms caused. Anderson Farms will lose their license and be required to sell its birds and assets to help mitigate costs that Tyson encountered. The information will be passed to the public that Anderson Farms is the one that caused the event and that we are working diligently to resolve the problem. The finance administration team that is set in place will determine the cost of the event and determine how much time and resources and money were used to respond to this event. Once everything is resolved, ICS will be disbanded. Your cost estimates, you're going to have in bird reimbursement, you're going to have about $400,000 per house. Your cleanup, you have about 5 employees with 3-hour shifts rotating between the total amount of people for 2 days. After airing out, employees will have to come back to the disinfected house to disinfect houses. The employees, there's 5 at $10 an hour with 10-hour shifts, so that's about $500 per day. Bird clean out is 40,000 birds per house. They will be incinerated. This would be an on-site 50 cents per bird, which is about $20,000. Equipment rentals, you have $200 a day for a skid steer, and other equipment is about $200, so you're looking at $400 per day in equipment. And for a total company loss, you're looking at about $421,400 per house. Our recommendations for this are to form a team that will identify, evaluate, and control feed safety hazards. Take samples of feed that enter and exit the mill to test for abnormalities. Take samples at farm to test for abnormalities. Establish security measures such as cameras in facilities. Just make sure that if you don't already have these security measures in place, that you install cameras in order to monitor the facilities and to make sure that there are people who are not entering the facility who could cause harm to the feed.